Hey everyone, it's Gunner Run 13 again, and back with a follow-up video. This video is gonna kind of go over a lot of the knives that I've recently shown in the past month or two. And what I want to do is kind of go over some of my blades and talk about them, or specific blades that will fit the role of a combat fighting knife. Okay. Partially with the survival role too, but I'm not specifically talking about a self-reliance survival situation or bushcrafting situation or something like that. More of, you know, the behind enemy lines combat survival role, but mainly on the combat fighting knife. Now the combat fighting knife, first off, you think of the granddaddy of them all, or the godfather of them all, the Ka-Bar fighting knife. And I will have a review on the Ka-Bar fighting knife coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. So I'm not going to touch base on that, but I'm talking about roles to fill that role of the Ka-Bar fighting knife. The Ka-Bar fighting knife fits the utility role, the fighting combat role, the survival role, the self-reliance bushcraft role. All in all, it's generally a great knife. So I'm talking about knives that fit generally that combat fighting role specifically. Okay, so I want to go over some of the knives I've just recently gone over out of my collection of knives that fit that role specifically. Say if I were to be going into combat as a soldier, you know, what types of knives I might carry with myself on my person to fill that combat fighting. Plus you want to have a utility sense to it, because generally as a fighting soldier, or as a soldier, you know, you will have more downtime than anything, to where you would be using, you know, these fighting knives also as a utility role for, you know, opening up, you know, opening up containers and, you know, MREs and rations and all that good stuff. You know, you use that role in other senses more than just actual sticking a person in a combat situation in general, but ultimately that's what that knife fulfills. So we'll kind of touch base on that, and you know, right off the bat here, I have from a video I just put up would be the Ontario Mark III Mod Zero Navy knife, made by Ontario, the original, or United States Navy SEAL knife. You know, and that fits that fighting knife category very well amongst, say, the Ka-Bars, or say an Air Force survival pilot knife, or, you know, stuff like, well, not really the Air Force survival knife, that's more of a survival knife, but it does fit that fighting role also. But specifically knives like that, not as much the utility factor on this blade, but definitely this would be a combat knife that you can use. Maybe not the best choice out there, but something, you know, I would put in that category of a combat fighting knife. Kind of going to go through these kind of quickly, because I don't want, you know, I can't spend too much time on this. But let's kind of talk about that knife. Another awesome knife out of these knives that I've shown, I would put in that category as a combat soldier knife. Combat fighting knife would be this Cold Steel SRK. Nice 6-inch blade, built for piercing, built for stabbing and slashing and all that good stuff. Fills a utility survival role very well too. But as a combat fighting knife, I definitely would throw in this Cold Steel SRK. Another knife I would throw in there would be this Gerber Prodigy with the Tanto blade. Definitely fills that role nicely of a combat fighting knife. That's what this was actually designed for in the U.S. military, U.S. Army. So this would fit that category quite well. Also, while I'm at it, here is the other Gerber Prodigy that I do have, but this with a drop point blade. Once again, a nice combat fighting knife, fill that role. It also filled the utility and survival role as well. Once again, this is what this was built for, designed for. And its big brother, the Gerber LMF. Once again, built for that combat fighting utility survival role. I know there are actually a lot of soldiers that have brought this over to Afghanistan and Iraq in the past and have used it. I've read the reviews. I know people that have, and generally this blade passes with flying colors as a very soldier-friendly knife. You know, some people don't like the serrations in it, but needless to say, in that type of role, serrations could be a very important part. So that kind of hits these Gerbers over here. Going back to the Navy SEAL, original Navy SEAL knife here, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the SOG SEAL Pup. You know, this was designed for Navy SEALs to use as well. So this definitely, with an aggressive clip point design with the serrations, fills that role of a combat fighting knife. Little lagging in the utility or the survival capabilities is my point. Not really. I mean, you could get by with this knife, but I'm just saying this is definitely you know, directed towards that fighting, aggressive defensive fighting combat fighting knife. So this would be the SOG SEAL Pup. Also on the SOG line to fill that role would be this SOG Northwest Ranger. Definitely can be used as a fighting blade, a soldier-ready combat knife, real fast in the hand. Also can cover that utility survival role as well. But this would be a knife I would not mind having strapped to my gear. Very cool knife, and that's a SOG Northwest Ranger, a very soldier-friendly knife. On the SOG line, another knife, look for a review coming up. Hopefully soon would be the SOG Force, which I think would be probably my #1 choice in a combat type of knife and survival capabilities. Just as soon as I could get my hands on one, I'm waiting for them to. They are available right now and a little pricey, the SOG Force, but I'm waiting. SOG's changing them over to only plain edged right now, and all I'm finding is the serrated version, and I do want the plain edge version. So look for the SOG Force coming out soon. Review. But this is the Northwest Ranger. Once again, good combat knife. Going over those Gerber knives I spoke about recently. You know, I've heard of people using the Ka-Bar Becker BK3 in that role as well. You know, would this be ideal for that situation? I'm not quite sure. It's pretty hefty, but it'll work as a nice pry bar. You know, utility, survival, and fighting capabilities on this blade as well. Let me pause on this video here, guys, real quick for a quick battery change, and we'll continue on with some more knife. Alright, guys, didn't want to lose you there on this video, but Becker BK2, I think, can fill that role a bit as a fighting blade. Would that be ideal or my #1 choice? More than likely not, but then again, this is going to be an indestructible knife that you can take into a combat situation, and you know this thing's going to last, no matter what you put through it. So this definitely is soldier-proof right here, so you can throw that in that category. Going down the line of the Beckers, Becker BK7, combat Bowie knife. This is Ethan Becker, the designer for the Becker knife line, originally with Camillus, now with Ka-Bar, as his design for his version of the Ka-Bar fighting knife, of what he would interpret if he were to sort of replace that knife with. And this is overall a pretty cool knife that I think would be great for the combat application. Nice 7-inch blade, a little weight to it, not too heavy. Weight counts, you know, nice impact, headache maker in the back or pommel. You know, definitely aggressive piercing design with the false wedge right there. Even can sharpen that up if you wanted to for real aggressive piercing. But all in all, that's what this knife was designed for, specifically combat fighting role. Could also be used as a survival or utility role as well. So definitely I would throw this knife up there in that category. Going up to its big brother, once again, Becker BK9, Ka-Bar Becker BK9. Now this is titled as the Becker BK9 Combat Bowie Knife. I mean, this is a combat fighting knife. This is on the large size, 9-inch blade, but you know, it's not the super heavy knife, and weight counts, but you know, maybe a soldier would want something a little on the larger, bigger side of things right here, which this would fit that bill right there. You know, this is a nice 9-inch Bowie knife. Bowie knives are you know, great combat knives. So definitely this combat Bowie fighting knife would, the Becker BK9, I would definitely put in that same category for a combat knife, combat blade. You know, you start getting into these larger sizes for chopping capabilities. You know, you don't want to mistakenly, but you could get into then using machetes, you know, which do have their role for a soldier, you know, in jungle operations and such. Like specifically, this is a smaller 13-inch Ontario USGI machete. You know, I'm not going to put this as a combat fighting knife, but I'm just kind of showing you off of the 9-inch larger blades. Same thing with this kukri style machete also, you know, and there are some smaller ones too, and this is pretty small as far as machetes go that could fit into that combat role, definitely with jungle operations and such. Another role would be your bayonets. You know, bayonets make awesome blades, utility and fighting knives. You know, one of the better knives out there is an actual AK-47 bayonet, which I wish I had one down here with this video, but I unfortunately didn't think about that at the time, but that just came into my mind. So, you know, definitely a bayonet would fill that role also and would be on hand. You know, generally in my type of equipment, like with the survival fighting knife, you know, I would throw in the role also of a folding knife. You know, I would have more than one knife on hand than just, you know, a large fixed blade or a combat fighting knife. Perfect role right here. This would fit the role perfect right there, and that would be the Cold Steel Recon 1. You know, also a blade used by Navy SEALs. This definitely is a good sized knife. I mean, you know, I'll match that up against right here up against a SEAL pup. So definitely, you know, various defensive knives in the folding category would be perfect fits for, you know, a soldier to carry in a combat situation. I'm not going to go over all the different folding knives that could be in that category, but I just wanted to throw this one out there in general. And this all leads up to the granddaddy, you know, military fighting knife, that being the Ka-Bar fighting knife. Like I said, video coming up soon on that. So I just wanted to touch base on some of the blades I recently showed you that would fit nice in that combat fighting defensive role. Not so much on the survival or the utility factor, which is important for a soldier blade, but mainly having these blades for one purpose only, and that would be to kill bad guys with. So, you know, I kind of wanted to just go over these types of knives and blades in general to talk about and discuss and show some of my stuff to you and what I would figure that would fit that role that I've discussed lately. So, this is just a video on the combat knife, guys, the fighting knife. Wanted to throw that out to you, see what you guys think of other blades that are perfect to fit that role as well in the combat / fighting And we'll throw in the survival utility role as well, but mainly combat fighting role. So guys, this is Gunner Run 13, and we will see you on the next video.